Welcome to Podcast Done For You, the show where we make it as easy as possible for you to make the right choices to advance your podcasting career. So let's get started on the show. How to build an online presence for your business. That is the focus of today's episode of Podcast Done For You. Thank you so much for joining us. We've got a lot to cover in this particular episode. For those of you that are new, thank you for coming along for the first time. For those of you that are subscribers, thank you for joining in again for this discussion. And for those of you that are new, please, whether you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform or you are listening to us on YouTube podcasts, we'd love you to hit subscribe and please join us regularly with lots of information for you. I will fill you in shortly on what Podcast Done For You is all about. But for now, I really want to get straight into this whole area of building your online presence. Now, there are certain things that I think are absolutely compulsory these days, and I'm going to make some assumptions, first of all, that you actually have a business and that you understand what that business is delivering and that you have some sort of audience already built up. Now, if you don't have any audience at all yet, that's also okay. We'll talk about some of those things that you can be doing as part of this particular podcast episode, so stay tuned. The main thing that I want to cover off firstly is the fundamentals. You need to have, I believe these days, a web presence. That means a website. Now, there are those that will argue that you don't need a website anymore. I will argue differently. Simple reason. I do this all the time. I know lots of people do it as well. When you send an email to someone, be it the first time, be it after, reconnecting, whatever it is, the chances that people will pick up that email address and look at the URL that is attached to that email and then go looking for that website are fairly high. I do it all the time because it's a way of checking the validity of the people that are contacting me. We all get contacted by scammers, sadly, a lot of the time, or people who aren't real or don't have a real business, whatever you want to call them. First of all, checking they've got a legitimate website is a really great starting point. And there are lots of checks and balances to see in place, whether they've got a registered business name and other things that are associated with it. So it's not just a simple web page that someone's put up very quickly and has no legitimacy about it. So that is certainly something that I believe is absolutely dead certain that you need if you want to build a presence. The reason we want to talk about all of this, and because I know many of you are here to hear specifically about the podcast, we're going to come to that, so stay tuned. But I think the other thing that you need to do, particularly in business these days, is you do need to have a presence on LinkedIn. Now, I tend to opt more for the personal page rather than the business page. It depends on the nature of your business. Just remember, people tend to follow more individuals than they do a business. It may be different in your particular area. But really focus on that, whether it's a business page or a personal page. You perhaps need both, and you need to have people within your business that are willing to share as well. But I believe you need to have a presence on LinkedIn is the summary of it. And in order to make LinkedIn work, and indeed your website work well for you to build your online presence, you need content, and you need content regularly produced. And that content needs to be educating your audience, but having a conversation with them about things that matter to them that you can add value to. What do I mean by that? Talking to their pain points. Don't just sell all the time, because if all you're doing is selling, people will get turned off very, very quickly. If you want to build your online presence, then add value. Be part of the conversation. That is why we come to the most important part here. And the reason we're here on Podcast Done For You is you need a podcast. Now, I've had other episodes in the past where we've talked about why you need a podcast as well, but I will just go back to some very basic stats for those of you that haven't heard it before. There are, at best guess, no more than 225,000 active business podcasts in the world. I believe that is a grossly exaggerated number, but we're sort of taking a 50% slice of what the active podcasts are that exist out there. So we're dismissing all of your entertainment and personality-driven podcasts and just focusing on the business ones. Now, there are 500 million listeners per month and growing of podcasts. If you add in YouTube users, and that's why YouTube videos are so important for your podcast. And again, look at previous episodes of Podcasts Done For You because it doesn't need to be a video. We're doing a video right now, but it doesn't need to be a video. You can just do audio podcasts on YouTube that have a very similar kind of reach. So I advise you to do that and watch that other episode as to if you want more detail about that. But what I do recommend is that if you are going to be really looking at building your online presence and wanting to grow your business, podcasts are just a absolute must. All of those reasons with those stats that I just mentioned, yes, and the stat I mentioned earlier about websites, if you want to stand out, you need something more than just the website, and the podcast gives it to you. Now, what the podcast does is it is going to build your credibility. It's going to educate your audience. And more than anything else, it's going to give you consistency. Now, that is a really important part of having an online presence. You need to keep producing new content all the time if you don't want to fall behind everyone else. And increasingly, Google is getting smarter in what it's reading, and it is definitely looking at video and audio files as well on your website, which of course you can take transcripts of those and produce articles. And we have wonderful AI tools out there at the moment that are going to help you use those spoken words and turn them into other things. You shouldn't do it in the other way around. Don't start with the AI. Let the AI work with what is unique that you have produced in a podcast. Now, you're sitting there thinking, okay, I want to grow my online presence. You're talking about Podcasts Done For You. What is Podcasts Done For You all about? Well, I want to share this with you just very briefly. And again, those of you that are familiar with Podcasts Done For You, we appreciate your loyalty. And you will know that what we do is offer a very unique service. We will do everything for you in a podcast, from the strategy through to publishing. And we can even help you with some of the bits and pieces that you want to populate in various things, newsletters, social media, websites, etc. But the main differentiator that we have in the market in doing everything for you is I will also help you host the program. The reason for doing that is to build your credibility, and you can have a look at a previous episode of Podcasts Done For You where we talk exactly to that point and why it is so vital for you to think about having a host of your podcast that is independent of you, so you are there as just a credible expert. So check out that previous episode if you want more information about that one. So Podcasts Done For You is there as a solution for you so you can really go ahead and grow your online presence. The great thing about a podcast is not only does it help educate your audience and grow your audience over a period of time, it can also be something where eventually you can sell some advertising in it, for example, and the cost of producing that podcast can be subsidized by that. There is always someone else that is looking to grab the same audience as you that would be willing to advertise in your program. So check that out if that is an option for you. But again, growing your online presence is going to get back down to educating your audience consistently. Now, the key word there is also audience. It's again something we've focused on in more detail in previous episodes, but I wanted to summarize all of this in today's podcast because understanding your audience is so super critical. There's no point having a conversation with people in a podcast that aren't really your audience. They're not your ideal clients. And indeed, if there is no audience out there for your business, if you're based on a whim and you don't know if people are going to come to you, well, do your research first and work that out. But certainly, I would advise you to spend a bit of time working out more detail about who your audience is, what makes them unique, and why they should come to you, because it is a really important aspect of this. Now, if you want to grow your audience for your online presence, the thing about it is that you want to, as I said before, add value. Now, what does that mean? We touched on it a little bit in terms of talking to their pain points. And I think this is a really important exercise as part of understanding your audience is what is it that they really want some help with. Now, the reason I'm delivering this to you is because you are watching this because you want to build your online presence. You want to grow it and you want to do something that is unique and different. I am not about giving you the same as what you'll find in all of the other things that might be similar to around this subject. I'm trying to give you something that is practical and easy to do and why it is so vital. Because I think that if you're watching this, you would have nodded your head to, yes, having a website, to having a LinkedIn profile, but do you have consistent content being distributed to it? And more importantly, do you have a unique voice? That is what the differentiator is here. If you really want to build your online presence, then you need your unique voice to shine. That's why I'm doing this here right now. You're having a conversation or hearing a conversation with me, and it is about you understanding my unique perspective on things. I'm not going to be the same as everybody else because I have my own experiences in there. I know the power of audio, particularly. Yes, you might be watching the video, but it is the audio which is the most important thing. I want you to be listening in to what we're talking about here because it will resonate with you or it won't. If it doesn't, fantastic. I appreciated your presence and I hope you come again and maybe something else will tickle your fancy. But if you're sticking around, it's because you like what I'm having to say. Now, again, I'm going to share a few stories with you, not just in this podcast, but in other episodes. And I hope that that resonates with you. And if that means that you want to come and either just listen to future episodes or you want to engage with me directly, I welcome that. Everybody's welcome. I think that that is the important part here is they've got to be in the conversation. And you can't be in the conversation by just having a website that is flat and occasional posts on a LinkedIn that are just like everybody else's posts. The thing we know is that all of these platforms are engaging more and more with unique video and audio for the simple reason that they're not being produced by AI. They are authentic and real. Learn the real stories of what's happening. I can tell you that without doubt, the presence of podcasts as part of a number of my clients is concerned has definitely added to their audience. And remember, it's not just, you don't just want to grow your audience so it's a mass audience. Whilst that is nice, it's very rare that you're going to be relevant to such a big mass. You want the actual ideal audience. You want your ideal clients coming to you. And to get ideal clients, you need to talk to them and make them understand what is relevant to you. For example, if you want to be a client of mine, well, let me tell you the things that the kind of audience that I talk to, generally speaking, are very much in the professional services space, tend to be more focused on a B2B presence, and they tend to be businesses that are established and have and are employing a couple of people at least in their business. Not exclusively, of course, we work with others, but that is who the mainstay is. And so you'll find that in the things that I do, I have another podcast called Biz Bites. That's exactly the audience that I try and have a conversation with on a regular basis. Now, this is a much broader reach because I am all about trying to help as many people as I can get into the podcast space and explain why it is really important to do so. So if you would like some help, come and contact us at Podcast Done For You because we can make it happen for you. And it doesn't matter if you're not in that professional services B2B space, don't worry about it. Let's have a conversation. If I can't help you, I might be able to point you in a direction of someone who can. But I believe that I can help most businesses in some way, shape, or form getting their podcast up and running. We'll design something specifically for you. And whether you take on that opportunity for me to be host or not, it is certainly something we can work with you about. I will wrap things up for this particular episode of Podcast Done For You by simply saying, to build your online presence, the first thing that you really need to make sure you have once you get past the basics is a podcast. It is the absolutely best way to reach people. Audio always has been. I know here in Australia, for example, as a good example of how powerful it is. in Australia, the number one radio station in Australia, in all areas of Australia, over decades, consistently is talkback radio. People enjoy listening to conversations. They like they like learning new things that improve their mindset, that will help them in their business outcomes. That is what we're here to do. That's what you're here to do with your own business and your podcast. So I encourage you to make it happen. It is the key to building your online presence. I hope you've got something out of this episode. If you would like more information, details are in the show notes below. Again, please subscribe, particularly on YouTube, but on any of the podcast platforms where you are listening in right now. We always welcome your comments, and I'd love to have conversations with you about what else I can help you with in the Podcast Done For You show. For now, thanks for your company. Look forward to speaking to you next time on Podcast Done For You, the show.